What's up guys, KWJ3 Austin here, and welcome to my review of The Dark Tower. I'm just going to start right off the bat by saying this movie is nothing like the book series it's based on. It shares some characters and locations, but that's about it. Of course, at the time of this review, the last book in the series I read was Wizard and Glass, so there's probably stuff that even I'm missing. Having said that, I'm going to be reviewing this movie with as little reference to the books as possible. I will compare a few things here and there, but mostly we're going to look at it from the perspective of someone who's never read the books or has any comprehension of Stephen King's multiverse. And before I forget, this review will contain spoilers, so I'll give anyone who hasn't seen the movie yet 5 seconds to leave. Now that that's out of the way, let's get started with the storyline. The story centers around Jake Chambers, a teenage boy living in New York City with his mother and stepfather. Over the past year, he's been having strange visions of what he claims is another world, involving a war between Walter Paddock, also called the Man in Black, whose intent is to destroy the Dark Tower, and Roland Deschain, a gunslinger whose mission is to stop Walter and save the tower. When a new vision leads Jake to an abandoned house in Brooklyn, he finds a portal hidden inside, which transports him to Midworld, the land from his visions. That is, of course, after the house comes to life and hilariously tries to eat him. Soon after landing in Midworld, Jake runs into Roland, and together they team up to defeat the Man in Black. Now that right there is basically the premise of the first book in the series, but that's where the similarities stop. The Man in Black leads a group of people who capture children from various worlds who possess the Shining and use their power to send energy beams at the Dark Tower, weakening it little by little. As it turns out, Jake is one of these children, which explains his visions as well as the fact that the Man in Black is chasing him. Now to me, that sounds more like a twist on the story of Dr. Sleep, and it comes out of absolutely nowhere as well. But I do appreciate how many references there are to other Stephen King stories. Trust me, this movie is filled with Easter eggs. I could name quite a few I noticed right now, but I won't. I'll leave them for you to spot. Now at first, when I heard this movie was only an hour and a half, my expectations dropped significantly. The books are so rich and complex, I assumed things would turn out really bad if they condensed it that much. And honestly, I was sort of wrong. Rather than condense the story of the books, they instead took elements from the books and incorporated them into a new story, similar to how most superhero movies handle their source material. True, I was incredibly disappointed by how different this movie was from the books, but I didn't think the end result was totally bad. It wasn't great, and there were some things that either felt rushed, didn't make sense, or were downright stupid, but I think overall, it stood on its own pretty well apart from the books. But there is one more thing I want to talk about before we move on to the acting. One of the taglines of the movie, and of the books as well, is, "There are other worlds than these." These referring to Midworld and our world, which they call Keystone Earth. Those are the only two we see, even though they mention that there's a lot more worlds than that. Why mention that many other worlds exist and then not show them? I wish we could have at least seen one more, and maybe we could have if the movie had been like an hour longer. Anyway, time to talk about the acting. The main three actors, Idris Elba, Matthew McConaughey, and Tom Taylor, were all terrific as Roland, the Man in Black, and Jake respectively. Although I will say, the Man in Black was a very cliché villain. His motives are never clearly explained, we just assume he wants the Dark Tower to fall simply because he's evil. Of course, that has nothing to do with Matthew McConaughey's performance. He worked with what he was given, and at least gave enough cunning and slickness to the character to not totally make him a mwahahaha kind of villain. But it was very close, though. One of my favorite scenes was towards the end of the movie, when Jake and Roland arrive at Jake's apartment and find that his mom and stepdad have been killed. The reason I liked this scene obviously wasn't the event itself, but how well Idris Elba and Tom Taylor expressed their emotion. Both of them really sold the scene for me, and I felt a kind of father-son energy between them. I'm not afraid to admit I got that feeling in my throat during this scene. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Everyone else was pretty much average, but then again, they weren't really given that much time to shine, no pun intended, because the focus was really on the main three. That's why I can't really discuss the incredible Dennis Haysbert. He was hardly in it. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about the acting. Now let's move on to the special effects. Allow me to say, the Dark Tower itself looks like total shit. If there's one thing they could have kept in common with the books, it's the design of the tower, with its spiraling windows and field of red roses. What Nikolai Arcel decided to give us was a dull generic stick that looks like it desperately wants to be part of Hogwarts. At least the fight scenes were decent. I mean, nothing totally original, but it worked for what the movie was trying to be. There was some CGI which looked okay, I guess, but nothing outstanding. I'm mainly talking about when that monster thing attacked Roland and Jake in the woods after Jake thought he saw his father. That scene created a little bit of tension, but I pretty much figured they would both come out alive, and I was right. Near the end, when Roland and the Man in Black have their final battle, that scene was so cliché. Both have their moments of the upper hand, and right when it looks like the villain will win, a voice appears in the hero's head, encouraging him to rise up and do what he should have done all along, kill the son of a bitch. Even though I knew exactly how it would end up, I admit it was fun watching them get to that point. But I do have to mention, the chunk of steel that Walter threw at Roland looked CGI as hell, and the way Roland flew back also didn't look real. I mean, come on guys, you can do better than that. I've read a lot of other reviews which said this movie has choppy editing. I sort of see what they mean, but I didn't think it was that bad. There are a few scenes that just abruptly end with absolutely no flow between them. I saw it maybe 5 times or less, I didn't really keep count, but it didn't make or break the movie for me, it was just something I noticed. For me, most of the tension in this movie came not from the events themselves, but how those events affected the characters, mainly Jake. After seeing what his life in NYC was like, I really cared about him. Same with Roland. Watching his father die at the hands of the Man in Black, I felt sorry for him too. Both of them come from a similar place, having recently lost their fathers. As for the Man in Black, well, there was no character development on his side, I just wanted him to die. Mwahahaha! So in conclusion, I'm going to give The Dark Tower a 7 out of 10. It wasn't perfect, and it was pretty short and simple compared to the books, but I thought it was pretty good in a summer popcorn flick kind of way. Now I hear that Amazon picked up a TV show which will act as both a prequel and sequel to this movie, and then they're gonna make a second movie which Stephen King personally promises will be more faithful to the books. I hope we can trust him, because I really want to see Eddie and Susanna Dean, and even Oi the Billy Bumbler. In the meantime, if you haven't read the books, I promise they're much better than this movie, even though I myself haven't finished them yet. So that's it for my review of The Dark Tower. Thanks for watching, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Until then, peace out.